Greetings, everyone. Damien Dumar here, publisher of The Last Harvest by Lucien Mars. Today I'm going to read a new post authored by Lucien Mars, published on vampireashram.com in the Notes from the Night Side section, all about Project 2025 and its plans to derail and destroy democracy. So, without further ado, neo-Nazi Christian nationalism plans an election takeover in 2024. The roots of Christianity include incestual pornography and fascist insanity. The American Bill of Rights begins and ends with a warning for government to stay out of religion. The First Amendment, that the Christian Fascist Heritage Foundation wants to destroy as outlined in its dystopian Project 2025, currently states that, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, end quote. The last article of the Constitution prohibits any religious test, quote, as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States, end quote. The founders were emphasizing that the very structure of democracy depended upon strict adherence to the doctrine of separation between church and state. And that is exactly why the Project 2025 Christo-fascist plan is to override and obliterate the U.S. Constitution, which is not at all surprising, given that the granddaddy of Christo-fascism, St. Thomas Aquinas, proclaimed, quote, the highest aim of mankind is eternal happiness. To this chief aim of mankind, all earthly aims must be subordinated. This chief aim cannot be realized through human direction alone, but must obtain divine assistance, which is only to be obtained through the church. Therefore, the state, through which earthly aims are obtained, must be subordinated to the church, end quote. In other words, the state must be subordinated to Christian nationalism and Christo-fascism. Enter the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. Christianity already operates above and beyond the law. The church already operates above and beyond the law. The Internal Revenue Code requires that, in return for tax-exempt status, churches must refrain from political activities such as, quote, contacting or urging the public to contact legislators in order to support, propose, or oppose legislation, or advocating the adoption or rejection of legislation, end quote. Despite this, the churches have been allowed to lobby with financial and political impunity. The father of Christo-fascism, Thomas Aquinas, had this to say on the subject, quote, church and state are as two swords which God has given to Christendom for protection, end quote. It is obvious that Aquinas had in mind a melding of the two with the subordination of the state, bowing down to the biblical God and Christian tyranny, which is exactly what Project 2025, as sponsored by the Heritage Foundation, has in mind. The end of democracy and the rise of theocratic fascism. Abuse is already rife by the government on this false separation and privilege status provided to the churches. As granted in the tax-exempt status of the churches, in the special postal rates they receive, in the discounts and privileges accorded to the corrupted clergy. Except for Nevada, every state in the country still maintains draconian religious laws, the first of which dates back to 1610 in Virginia. That law reads, quote, every man and woman shall repair in the morning to the divine service and sermons preached upon the Sabbath day, and in the afternoon to divine service and catechizing, brainwashing, end quote. The penalty for a first offense of this law was loss of provisions for a week, for a second, a whipping, and for the third, death. Let's save that one for Project 2026, shall we? The government already and blatantly violates the separation of church and state. Instead, it uses your tax dollars to pay for chaplains for the armed services as well as for Congress. The full breach of the Constitution began in earnest after World War II, when the government directly gave away millions, if not billions, that it donated to the tax-exempt gluttony of Christendom. In 1944, the Surplus Property Act was passed with the intent of distributing excess federal land and goods acquired during the war to nonprofit organizations. The government gave away or sold for next to nothing naval and army bases, which included hundreds of acres of land, buildings, materials, and machinery, to dozens of religious organizations. The single largest gift went to the Seventh-day Adventists, who received part of Camp McQuaid in California, complete with 300 acres of land and 237 buildings. The actual wealth of the churches is unknown because the government does not require full disclosure of their finances. Estimates as of 1980 place the combined real estate wealth of the churches as exceeding $100 billion, which only includes real estate. The figure, according to researcher Philip Ciafari, does not include investments in stocks, bonds, or other financial instruments. He quotes, quote, "Once again, churches are not required to report their investments, but it has been estimated conservatively that Roman Catholic investments alone total as high as $20 billion in 1980, end quote." The aims of Christian nationalism: destroy democracy for a dictatorial theocracy. Project 2025 proposes that the entire federal bureaucracy, including independent agencies such as the Department of Justice, be placed under direct presidential control, a controversial idea known as, quote, unitary executive theory, end quote. The appointments, like those Trump placed in power, include the two most corrupted Supreme Court justices, Samuel Alito, and the $4 million gifting provided to Clarence Thomas that he simply forgot to report as gifts on his income tax returns. These two religiously compromised justices were handpicked for their religious biases to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they plan to take the country as far back as the tax-exempt Christo-fascist backers determine. The proposals also call for eliminating job protections for thousands of government employees, who could then be replaced by political appointees, read religious MAGA extremists. The document labels the FBI a, quote, bloated, arrogant, increasingly lawless organization, end quote, and calls for drastic overhauls of this and other federal agencies, including eliminating the Department of Education. The FBI is being targeted because they rightly warn America of the looming threat from right-wing fascist MAGA United States Soviet Republicans. The hypocrisy would be laughable were it not so dangerous. This from a party that condones death threats to its political opponents, and a cult party that supports a crotch-grabbing criminal felon still facing multiple trials that are being sat upon to benefit his election, after which the trials will go away. But Trump will never go away since there will be no further elections, a promise Trump has made, insinuating that Biden somehow plans to end them, which is a classical symptom of psychosis, that of projecting onto the enemy what you yourself are guilty of doing. This lesson was learned from the Nazis and appropriate for a felon who recently called for a unified Reich. The man is mentally ill, profoundly confused and delusional, and the most dangerous man ever to cheat, steal, and lie his way into office. Oh, but he is the poster child for Christo-fascism, and all sins may be absolved in the name of tax-free profits. Plan to ban pornography, but what about the Bible? Under the Project 2025 proposals, pornography would be banned, and tech and telecoms companies that facilitate access to such content would be shut down. I like this one, simply because it means all versions of the Bible shall, under those rules, become immediately banned and burned. It also means that if adopted, all Christian broadcasting stations will also be banned. After all, the Bible contains some of the most pornographic stories ever to disgrace anything approaching religion, next to outright Satanism. Take just one juicy example, that of the two Lolita daughters of the beloved Lot who first offered his daughters to be gang raped instead of allowing a gang of misfits who wanted to a few visiting angels. That's what they were worth to the depraved father, as worthy of being gang raped. The words flew right out of Lot's mouth without a moment's hesitation. Later, according to Genesis 19:30, it says, quote, "Now Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. So he dwelt in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us, have sexual intercourse, after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, get drunk, and we will lie with him, have sex with him, that we may preserve offspring through our father, end quote. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and had sex with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Here is a grand liar indeed, who is able to achieve an erection and ejaculate his semen into his own daughter, but not know that she was ever there. And on the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, quote, Behold, I lay last night, had sex last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight, get drunk also. Then you go in and lie with him, have sex with him, that we may preserve offspring to our father, end quote. So they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Again, this disgusting incestual story supposes a man can achieve an erection, have sex with his own daughter riding on top of him, then have an orgasm and ejaculate his semen into her and not know of the event. The blame is, of course, placed upon the 2 young and randy daughters and not Lot, who couldn't recall having sex by achieving an erection after being plied with wine, climaxing and ejaculating not once but twice on consecutive nights, once with each daughter. Could it be that Lot was an active participant in the incest? Yes, for the simple reason that no man who can achieve an erection, be ridden by his own daughter, not once but twice, then climax and ejaculate his semen into her, could claim to be unaware of the incestuous event that happened not once but twice. Lot's sex with the younger daughter may also make him guilty of being a pedophile, but blaming it on the wine and obvious sexual advances that were being made would not pass muster under the law as his denial of not knowing about it. And not just with 1 daughter, but 2. This is the very definition of incestual pornography. First, he was willing to have them both gang raped and inconveniently forgot that he climaxed into his own daughters on consecutive nights after getting drunk, and then lied about remembering the incestuous sexcapades. Is this a story to tell your children, or to have this trashy porn available in a library? Is there a redeeming moral to the story other than to deny you screwed 2 of your daughters under the influence of being an alcoholic? If anything qualifies as gross pornography, it is this story of incest by a father who claims to have forgotten it ever happened. Twice. On the grounds that if the hypocrites proposing Project 2025 want to ban pornography, the Bible itself must be banned for the disgusting incestual tale of their beloved Lot, who offers his 2 daughters first to be gang raped, then forgets ever having sex with each of them on consecutive nights. Even the author of a pulp-writing dime store sex novel would blush at the blatant lie because nobody would believe it, except perhaps deluded and mentally unbalanced Christians. The Bible provides one of the grossest, most pornographic depictions of an incestual father named Lot. This exemplifies the gross hypocrisy of Christianity, peddling incestual pornography to children, no less. This tale would not be allowed to be sold to minors otherwise. It should be banned in schools at the very least. Perhaps this explains also the great number of pedophile priests who use Lot's erotic tale as an example, and who perhaps use the tale to justify to their child victims and themselves that because Lot was favored by God, bend over and take it like a good Christian girl or boy. So yes, if they want to ban porn, start with the pornographic Bible first and foremost. It should not be available to children as an example of Christian godliness. There is nothing godly about incest and being drunk and telling bold-faced lies. It's the unabashed story of a lustily drunken father having sex with both his daughters and denying that he even remembered the event. He's also a first-class liar, maybe second only to Donald Trump. Stop Project 2025. California Congressman Jared Huffman announced a Stop Project 2025 task force. Mr. Huffman said, quote, Project 2025 is more than an idea. It's a dystopian plot that's already in motion to dismantle our democratic institutions, abolish checks and balances, chip away at church-state separation, and impose a far-right agenda that infringes on basic liberties and violates public will. We need a coordinated strategy to save America and stop this coup before it's too late." End quote. Project 2025 also plans to end the current norms and policies that keep the Department of Justice and the FBI independent from the White House. This would allow the president to interfere with how both agencies are led and operate, and to use both agencies for self-serving religio-political purposes. He could put his religio-political loyalists and fascists in control and use the agencies to go after anyone he perceives as an enemy. These changes would also allow for executive branch involvement in how election-related federal offenses are investigated or ignored depending upon which party is involved. Now imagine a repeat of the big lie on January 6th, this time with all these changes in place. If Project 2025 is successful, what limited Trump's power in his first term may not exist to stop him again. Ban the Federal Reserve, another Project 2025 target. The economic advisors behind Project 2025 suggest that a second Trump administration should slash corporate and income taxes, abolish the Federal Reserve, and even consider a return to gold-backed currency. Next to the drunken and incestuous porn in the Bible as the #1 porn book that should be banned, is the target of abolishing the Federal Reserve, for which I also agree. The Federal Reserve is neither federal and is instead an Illuminati, make money, make war machine intent upon depopulating the public, regardless of religious standing. It also has no reserves but borrows on air and make-believe money that it coins, which is another constitutional provision usurped by the Illuminati politicos. But the insanity of returning to a gold-backed currency would be impossible, since the supplies of gold represent at best a fractional share of the funny money the so-called Federal Reserve has enslaved the U.S. taxpayers to assume for the billions in bombs being sent to Israel and for every war waged by America for the benefit of the elite billionaires. The result would be an instant stock market crash, a depression the likes of which will make the Great Depression pale in comparison. It would shut down businesses and banks all across the nation, cause an instant financial crisis in the U.S., and place the Illuminati in the position of being the only ones called in to rescue the destruction done by the Christo-fascist policies and the Project 2025 constitutional wrecking crew. The Illuminati-owned Federal Reserve would welcome the opportunity to defund the nation and watch it dissolve in a matter of weeks, if not days. State plans to steal the 2024 election. Just this past week, the state GOP-controlled legislatures in Georgia passed a law permitting them to delay the certification of electors in preparation for a 2024 stolen election, which they intend to do by intimidation and end runs around the democratic system. Remember the law of projection. Project onto your political enemies that which you intend to do or have been doing all along. With enough chaos and confusion along with the rigged election attempts of red states like Georgia, they intend to bypass a legal election and pass the decision onto Congress and the supremely corrupt court, knowing their chances of winning the election honestly while promoting a convicted criminal felon who wants to pass a national abortion ban along with all the other poison pills being introduced by the neo-Nazi Christian Nationalism plan to overturn the Constitution. And that wraps up today's reading. Thank you for tuning in and for supporting our mission to uncover and share the truth. If you want to stay informed on the latest updates, be sure to visit our website at thelastharvest.info. And don't forget, The Last Harvest by Lucien Mars is available on Amazon, offering even more in-depth insights into the topics we cover. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Until next time, this is Damian Doomer signing off. Stay vigilant.